Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, he, in Malibu, he was looking out on, I guess, out in his balcony or whatever it is, his deck, and all of a sudden, a triangle went by, and he was not a believer at all in UFOs after that. He was 100% at that point. And, little things. I had a guest on my show, again, about 5 months ago, who wrote a book about the Aurora incident where a UFO back in the 1800s hit a water tower or whatever it is and crashed. Right. But you know what? He was telling me where he lived at and grew up as a child that, his father worked at the police department as the dispatcher. And all of a sudden they get a phone call in the middle of the night. People swore up and down they saw a UFO land in the local hospital's parking lot. Okay, so they dispatched, the police there. By the time the police got there, there was no sign of the UFO, but there was a circle about 30-some feet around, and it was melted into the asphalt, and it was still smoking and burning in spots. But what was interesting, they found mercury droplets around it. So the police, what he said, that what he remembers, is the police then kind of, put that safety tape or whatever to block it all off.
Right.
And they planned to investigate it more in the morning, try to figure out what it was. He claims that during the middle of the night, nobody knew about it. Come morning time, it was all repaved, all re-blacktopped.
I believe it.
Now, unfortunately, the police department reported that supposedly a UFO landed in a hospital parking lot, and there was whatever it was. Hey, maybe some group from the military or whatever came in and decided, okay, take pictures, get evidence, and then re-blacktop it for it's no proof.
Well, the one that I always found rather interesting, and again, I definitely believe in aliens. I subscribe to the Hynek Valley thing, which is it's like 10 or 15%, right? But it's the old story of Jackie Gleason. Jackie Gleason was buddies with Nixon, and one day Gleason got a phone call, and Nixon was in Florida, and said, "Hey, Jackie, I want you to come see something." So he goes over to Homestead. It was Homestead Air Force Base. And Nixon is there, and Nixon takes him in and shows him dead alien body. And Gleason was so upset by it that it changed him after that. And everybody was like, okay, whatever, that, sure. And Gleason's wife was like, no, it happened. He came home and told me he saw a dead alien body, and it just changed his worldview.
Well, it did
and
more
he was
than
never
that.
quite the same.
He was a heavy drinker, too, and all of a sudden he quit drinking and all that after supposing he's seen it. And a lot of people don't realize presidents, everybody thinks they have this huge amount of power. Now, Nixon had probably more till the end, okay, to Watergate. If that Watergate didn't happen, I hate to say it, of all the presidents we had, Nixon probably had the most power of any president we have ever had. And I think
certainly up there,
yeah, and I think of anybody that would know about UFOs, and a president, he would. I think some presidents weren't even informed about UFOs, if proof or anything.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably true.
But could you?
But, when you see this stuff, it changes you. It changes your perception, for sure.
Well, the thing that goes back in my mind, are we still, our civilization is advanced, right? We have all this great technology, but I keep going back in my mind, Orson Welles, War of the Worlds, right? People were busy listening to another radio show, it was on, and then they flipped over to CBS to listen to War of the Worlds, that play. Radio play that he put on. And a lot of people didn't catch the part, where he was telling people the disclaimer, hey, this is not a true, this is a play, blah, blah. And he did a real good disclaimer at the beginning of that, telling people. But some people didn't catch that. And there was mass panic in this country for those people, it caught on only, the middle of the show or after that disclaimer, and they really believed that we were being invaded. Now, hey, some of these people didn't have the education we have now. They didn't probably even have sixth grade education like the farmers and people like that. But I remember reading people that there was one farmer that killed his wife and all his kids because he thought it would be better than the aliens coming and killing them. And a lot of people freaked out. Now, I look at it this way. What would happen if it happened again? How would people respond today? I mean, seriously, if they got on the news and said we have a
snapshot of that, right? It's the Brookings study that they did back in the 60s, I think. And they got all these eminent anthropologists and sociologists and psychologists and scientists, and they all got into a big room, and they thought to themselves, what would happen if it became apparent that UFOs landed and aliens got out? And the summation of the Brookings report was something to the effect of there would be mass psychological breakdowns, there'd be a societal breakdown, that people couldn't handle it because it would shatter their beliefs in religion and culture. Now, that was the 60s. I mean, we've come a long way since then. But still, I think that if a UFO landed on the White House lawn,
oh yeah,
I think a lot of people would freak out.
Well, how about it was just take it one step farther. Let's say we got visited by an alien species, right? And they decided to zap out Nebraska or some town in Nebraska or Wyoming or Utah or Oregon or wherever, right? And just zap the town out and everybody knew about it. What would happen then? How would the civilization handle something like that? How would you feel, Olive? I know I would be so freaked out. Going under my bed wouldn't do any good. One, I'm too fat. I'm not going to fit. Number two, what good is it going to be under your bed?
Well, I think that there would be fear. And I think that the human response to fear of that kind is that once it initially happens, that the response is anger and militarization. I mean, we got attacked at Pearl Harbor. We were surprised by it. We were afraid that they were going to invade. We got angry, and we ground them into the ground. We had 9/11. We were all afraid. I mean, I remember I drove into work, and we were hearing on the radio that they were shutting down the bridges. And so, I just was like, I'm out of here, and I left. I'm driving home watching, F-18 flying around San Francisco. We were afraid. And so what did we do? We went and invaded somewhere and ground them into the ground. So I think if it happened, there'd be a lot of fear. And then I think it would be an armed response. I think that we would very quickly, all these DARPA programs and black budget programs would start trucking out and going, okay, well, it happened this time, but next time it's not going to happen again.
Well,
and we would devote huge amounts of our resources to creating whatever it took to blow them out of the sky, because that's the way we are. Hopefully
we have the technology to do it. That's the scary part. I don't know if we do or don't or whatever.
Oh, I think we do.
Well, we do. I'm hoping I really do. But from the standpoint, if they could do that, then how about if they did a mass invasion? I mean, would society break down? Would looting start in? Would people, would our whole civilization collapse really fast? That's the scary part. And, that's...
Parts of it would.
I think it would. And that's the scary part if something like that ever happened. And who knows, maybe that might happen. I don't even know. I don't know if our president even brought up the Space Force. One, to take heat off himself, to try to get, people to focus on other things. Or maybe even Pierce said afterwards, a month or so ago, he kind of mentioned, well, the Space Forces would be to protect our planet from, out there. Now, I'm going to go back one thing farther here before our show's over. One of my dad's best friends was a famous movie star. And all growing up, I didn't realize this guy, played Maverick. I didn't realize he was in the TV show, the star of Rockford Files and all that stuff. But, all growing up when I was a little kid, he'd come up this summer and spend a week with my dad. Or my dad would go down to California and spend time. I didn't realize it till one day got a little older and I was watching reruns of Maverick and I realized, oh my God, that's who this guy is. And when I think I was like 16 or 17 years old, we were talking and, I really had infatuation with Ronald Reagan, big time. And he says, well, Ronald is a real good friend of mine. And he goes, Gary, that Ronald Reagan does a show once a month, national radio show, where he talks to young people, where you can ask the president questions and he'll, answer and all that stuff. And I said, and he goes, you should call it. Well, all of a sudden, I was going to call the show, and all of a sudden I get a phone call from the White House. And here's Ronald Reagan. And he talked to me for like 5 or 10 minutes, and I asked him some questions and he answered it. I was really ecstatic, right? I got to talk to the president. About a week later, I get another phone call. Here's Ronald Reagan again. Now, evidently, James, told, Reagan I was so infatuated with him. And maybe that kind of brought up some interest in Reagan. I don't know. But I managed to talk to Ronald Reagan several times, while he was president. And I asked him one time, seriously, and I swear to God, this is a true story. I asked him because they were really pushing, Star Wars.
Right.
And, and I said, is that going to protect us against the Soviet Union? And he goes, well, I don't know about that, but it'll protect us against them out there. And,
exactly.
It didn't hit me right away. It didn't hit me for a long time till I got older and started doing broadcasting and we're into paranormal. And then one day I remembered the conversation when he said, out there. Did they know something that, even then and farther back, that, they were trying to make a defense for Earth against something out there?
Well, I would argue to you that the answer is absolutely yes. And I can't tell you if it's aliens or Nazis, but I would posit to you that there is a very sophisticated multinational defense system up there. And we've seen it used like it, in the STS-48 video and other times. But I would absolutely argue to you that there is a multinational defense system. I mean, it's a little known fact that the Russian Soviets had actually launched, I believe, 5 Almaz. They were called Almazes, and the Almazes were they were like orbital defense stations. And the first one had a recoilless cannon, and they actually had to put engines like retro rockets on it, so that when they fired the cannon, which they did test fire, that they could counter the movement caused by the blast to keep the thing in stationary orbit.
Oh, wow.
But the Soviets, the pinnacle of the Soviet defense system, at least publicly, was a thing called the Polyaskiff. And the Polyaskiff was about the size of a space shuttle. It was launched. The Soviets claimed that it suffered a mechanical failure and went into a ballistic orbit and burned up, but nobody saw it burn up. But this thing's the size of a space shuttle. It had nuclear missiles on it. It had lasers. It had all kinds of crap on it. And they put it into orbit.
Yeah.
Now, their explanation of how it was destroyed is pretty absurd. They said that that the ground station sent a command to it to unfurl the solar panels, which was successful. And then they accidentally sent the same command the second time, which confused it and put it into a ballistic orbit, which caused it to burn up. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but maybe. But what I would tell you is a second thing, that I was being interviewed on a radio show, on Ground Zero, in fact. And it was one of the first times that I had ever gone on a show talking about the secret space program and all that kind of stuff. And I was talking about Star Wars and some of the things that they had built and put in orbit. this guy calls. He says, I'm a retired